This is Face the State for Sunday, April 6th. A shakeup in Dauphin County with the commissioner getting stripped of some leadership positions. You'll hear from a fellow commissioner in the thick of the fallout. What happens in the Department of Education if it gets erased? Well, we have a state leader who is backing the idea in a big way, and the markets are tumbling. The trade war has begun. Our insiders are looking at the political fallout of all that and much more this week on Face the State.
CBS 21 News presents Face the State with Joel D. Smith, a look at the issues and politics that shake Pennsylvania.
A lot going on in Dauphin County this week, so we're lucky enough to welcome to the show Democratic County Commissioner. It is from Dauphin County, Justin Douglas. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We have a lot to talk about. I do want to start with this, though. A lot of questions surrounding the conduct of one of your fellow county commissioners. It is George Hartwick. We obtained court documents from the Attorney General's office. It says in part that he told police that he had a half a bottle of vodka before coming to this week's commissioners meeting. Did you have any indication of that when he came in?
You know, this is an ongoing investigation, and I'm not able to comment on ongoing investigations. I just want to emphasize that my thoughts and prayers and the thoughts and prayers of Commissioner Priest are with Commissioner Hartwick and his family at this time, and we're, leading through this challenging season.
What has been the fallout for you then in terms of getting the work done from the county as you have someone who is, like you said, is going through this process right now?
Well, all of us as commissioners have oversights. And so those oversights basically mean if there's a crisis in your department, you can call us immediately as your oversight commissioner, but also we provide support and leadership. And given the nature of things, we've ensured that every director has an oversight commissioner that right now can be responsive to their needs. And so that took place. That was one of the leadership decisions we made. And ultimately are continuing to provide support for our nearly 1,600 county workers who are doing great work for Dauphin County and our constituents.
As far as you're concerned, is there anything left that's going to happen structurally here or legally here that is going to potentially impact what happens with his position? Have you been told what's next in the process?
I am not sure.
Okay.
I'm not aware. I mean, there's a lot left to process, obviously, with an investigation, and I don't have an ability to comment on that.
Is this what you signed up for?
Look, I signed up to lead Dauphin County as a commissioner. Certainly, I'm a little over a year in, and there's been a lot of peaks and valleys, and I assume that might be part of the job. But there's a lot we've accomplished that I'm really proud of, and so in a sense, there's certainly things that are a surprise or things that I would say I certainly didn't expect coming into this job. But one of the things that's been incredibly gratifying is serving our constituents, serving our employees, and continuing to champion for progress in Dauphin County.
Let's get past this. Before this week, there was already a lot of turmoil and some friction.
Sure.
Take me back to something that maybe you're happy that you were able to expose and show people what was going on and then try to get past it and make better.
Well, look, we've had a lot of legacy contracts and a lot of questionable dealings that have been exposed. With that, we've been able to cancel some of those and ensure that taxpayer money is used in an appropriate way. That's really important to me. Every dollar that is entrusted to us should be something that ultimately we are ensuring is being utilized for the benefit of our region. And I feel like we've done much better with that. We need to continue to do that. There's still more to be done, but I'm grateful for where we were and where we are now and how we continue to refine that.
I'm going to wrap up this part with this. Do you support Commissioner Hartwick staying as a commissioner for now?
I have no comment.
Okay. Let's move on to something else, a big thing that people have been talking about. It's the Bhutanese refugees. Initially, you came out and said, we need to know more about this. Why are they being detained? All we knew initially was these are people that have been living here for a while legally. They're not citizens, but they've been here legally, and they've been living in our community, and they were just taken away. Where are you now that we did learn that a lot of them, or all of them, had some sort of criminal history, which is what made them eligible to be detained and then eventually deported, and some of those were some violent crimes in the past. Mm-hmm. What's your view of them now being deported, given that history that we do know about at this point?
Mm-hmm. My office and myself never said that these individuals did not have a criminal background. What we simply said was that we believed our judicial system was adequate to process those. These are refugees with green cards. Certainly these removal orders that were placed on their green cards, there's question of whether or not that was done in absentia, meaning they were not present for that, nor potentially notified appropriately. We've already seen ICE's inability to do administrative process, not only in our own state with Lehigh County in the Galarza case, where they detained an American citizen in a county jail, and the county got left holding the bag for that lawsuit. And then on top of it, we saw recently in Maryland that we deported somebody to an El Salvadorian prison who is not a gang member. So I have deep problems with ICE not giving proper due process to my constituents as they are being deported to a country that attempted to ethnically cleanse them a few decades ago. This is really problematic.
Well, right. Is that country even available to take them back at this point?
Well, we were closely monitoring, including staying up
Bhutan,
into
right?
the
Yep.
including staying up into the late evening when the first 10 went and were deported, with families getting feedback, and ultimately when that plane landed, we were told they were warmly welcomed, provided food, and provided even money. What they were not provided was documents to become a citizen. Instead, hours later, they were out of Bhutan in India at the border of Nepal, seemingly given the money so that they could buy an illegal border crossing into Nepal, where some of them have now been arrested for that. And so I say that to say one of my constituents, Dauphin County, was arrested. I don't know that person's fate. This is a human rights just quagmire, if you will. Like, these are people, these are fathers, these are sons,
right.
These are brothers, these are uncles, these are my constituents, and I don't understand why we can't hit the pause button on this and ensure that we're getting this right, because to make a former refugee a refugee again, to make someone stateless, there is real humanitarian questions here, and even further, there's the question of international laws that are being violated.
How far will you take this? Because I know you still feel a connection to them. They were a resident. They're really not anymore. They've been deported. So, how long do you stay with this? And do you have the capacity, as busy as you are, to really bring this to another level?
The Bhutanese Nepali community in Dauphin County is, in the region, is over 40,000.
Yeah.
Some say even over 50,000. They are living in fear right now. I've talked to naturalized citizens. These are people who are American citizens who are terrified and not leaving their house because they think they are going to suffer the same fate as these individuals. So I will continue to give it attention, and my office will find a way to give it attention, because ultimately, yes, you can say this person is no longer my constituent now that they are, in this situation and in another country, but their family members are my constituents, and they're reaching out to my office asking for support.
Yeah.
And the way that we can support, I want to pivot to something to just express something we can actually do, because I can't change ICE. Right. I can't change the Trump administration's policy. I can certainly call for them to hit the pause button and ensure that these people are being given, proper reception in Bhutan if they're going to continue to deport them. But what I will say is this: we can begin to look at language access for services that we provide. Many of the records that you're referencing are related to alcohol. These are people who watched their homes burn, ran for a border, became refugees for 2 decades. They have trauma that they're processing. We need to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make sure county drug and alcohol is being, deployed into this community.
Well, let's point out one more thing here. For these other acts we talked about, some of which were violent acts, did they serve their time on those things already?
I don't want to speak to every case, because some of these cases also happened in different states.
Right.
But we are aware of individuals who did have a case, served the entire time, and since coming back from that, have not had any cases for an extended period of time.
Right.
So when we talk about reentry, working and being a contributing member of society, having a job, paying your taxes, these aren't people who are mooching off the system. These are people who are ultimately contributing to the system here.
And we knew who they were. They were legally here at that point. They're not in that other category of illegally here.
I want to make one point clear.
Yep.
We don't know that they were properly notified that they had their removal orders placed on them. And I say that because when we went to Pike County and provided a visit for these families, ultimately to visit their family members for the last time, and we thought that might be the case, and ultimately it was, we were notifying the families once we got their A numbers, which is their alien number, and we could search them up in a system, which took time to get those.
Okay.
Once we got those, we realized some of these individuals had no idea that they had these orders. We notified their
Right.
family. Their family was shocked.
Problem. Yeah, that's another problem. Hey, you brought this up. I know we have a lot more to go on that,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you coming on and,
Appreciate you
and
having me
talking about a number of topics today. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, folks, we're just getting going here. We have a local lawmaker to talk to who is open to the public workers of potentially leaving their unions. How would that actually work? We're going to talk about that. Public Employees Bill of Rights, what does it mean? We're talking about that and much more next. Let's check out the Department of Education while it's still there. Our next guest is saying it might be okay if it's gone. We'll make up the difference here in the state. It's Cumberland County Republican Representative Barb Gleim. Is that what you're thinking in a nutshell?
Sure. I mean, I grew up in an era where we didn't have the Department of Education. In 1979, when, President Carter initiated this, I was already in high school. And I think the states did a great job of educating the students. And, my generation is doing pretty well, actually. So, we look at, well, what's happened since 1979? Has it really made an impact? And we know that it really hasn't made much of an impact. I know I've received a lot of calls from constituents saying, well, what does this mean? How is this going to impact us? I think really all they're going to do is do 50 block grants and you'll still receive the same amount of money, but it's the states who are going to determine,
right.
How that money is distributed.
Okay. We'll take the other side here for a second who wants to keep it around. They're saying, yeah, Pennsylvania does a nice job with this. I actually talked to the old Secretary of Education about this. And he even admitted, yeah, Pennsylvania does a great job, but other states don't. So to hold them accountable and to make sure that the standards are at least roughly the same everywhere in our country can be at a certain level, that's why you need the Department of Education. Are you just looking at after your fellow Pennsylvanians all this, or can you see the big picture?
Well, I definitely see the big picture, and I disagree with that. You're still going to have statistics. You're still going to have assessments. You're still going to have those coming into a different section of the U.S. government, probably under statistics. And then they'll be able to, determine which states are doing the best still, and which states aren't. I mean, you saw the NAEP scores. Everybody saw that. And it really hasn't moved the needle much since 1979 in some of these states. So I don't think that it's going to be an issue. Actually, I think there's going to be more flexibility for the states to put money where they actually need to have the money, and do what's best for their students in each state.
Okay, I want to move ahead to something else here. You're calling it the Public Employees Bill of Rights. So the main piece that caught our attention was something that if passed, union members could disassociate with the union at any time. I'm wondering how this really works, because then do you have like one group of people that's part of a union, one that's not, and then how do you negotiate with those separate groups of people if they're not under the same overall negotiating format?
So what groups specifically are you thinking about? I mean, this bill actually just makes it uniform across the board. It gives transparency to all of the public employees, and it's freedom, right? You can disassociate, or you can come in at will, and so I think that this is going to be good for the unions. We have a new generation of workers that aren't necessarily, embracing union, affiliation. And the fact that they know that they can disassociate or associate at will, I think will actually be helpful.
How would that help the unions?
How will that help the unions?
That's what you said. Yeah, you said it helps the unions. How would that be the case?
I think that, like I said, in their collective bargaining agreement, where they have a clause there that says, you can disassociate or associate at will, I think you're going to bring in this newer generation who seems to be shy from association.
Oh, I see. So would they give it a shot? Okay.
Like, I'm going to put this outside of the public employees for a second, and anybody who is, a Rotary member or any of those type of public service type of entities are finding it very difficult to get this newer generation to join up. But if you put out and say, you can just help on this section, or you don't have to necessarily, affiliate, or because you can disaffiliate at will, that we're getting more of that generation coming in and saying, okay, we're going to give it a try.
Yeah. I know that the numbers could be tough for them at that point, because if you're in it and you get the benefit of collective bargaining to get to a certain level, but then you're just opting out after that point, it seems like it's like having your cake and eating it too. Like, you get the benefits of being into the union, but then maybe you're sick of the dues and you get out, but you've already benefited at that point. Have you seen that part of the argument?
No, I haven't heard that for this argument at all.
Okay.
They're going to be getting their annual accounting of where, what the dues are, where the dues are going, and it's really going to be up to the union and, to keep them in and keep them engaged. And I think they do a good job of that anyway, once you get people coming into the union. The first step of the bill, there's two parts of this. There's a part one and a part two, was just bringing us up to speed with the federal law.
Right.
And then the second part is, just really strengthening it. And I think that this is going to be helpful for the unions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It makes them really, I guess, if it works out the way you would like, to be worthwhile to go into without locking people in who don't want to be there. So it would make it more competitive. But I think there's some details to be worked out, and that's why you guys are so hard at work on all this. Barb Gleim, thanks for being here on Face the State. Good to see you.
Thanks much for having me.
All right, folks, we're talking about some of the issues you've already heard with our political insiders, but we're also getting a read on what might really be behind the trade war strategy. Do not look at your 401k. Instead, look at us after the break. My favorite time of the week. Here we go. The CBS 21 Political Insiders. This week is Democratic strategist Mark Singal, Republican strategist Mike Regan. Let us get to it. So we've looked at the George Hartwick situation. A lot of things we don't know yet. They're working this out. But on the surface, what we know so far, what are your takeaways as to where we are on this topic right now?
Well, first of all, George Hartwick is a friend of mine. I've known him for many years, and it really is not my habit to kick somebody when they're down. But I will say this, clearly there's some demons that he has, and I think he needs help, and he should probably get the help he needs in order to go forward.
Is that the kind of help you can get and keep your position?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
But, that's completely up to the people.
Sure. So you heard them talk about it a little bit. Where are you here?
Yeah, so like the governor said, I know him a little bit. Always had pleasant interactions with him. I think he's a good man. And I can only say, let the investigation play out. And if there is a problem there, I hope he gets help. And, my prayers go out to his family.
The other topic I brought up with Commissioner Douglas, he's been keeping an eye on these Bhutanese refugees. Now, some have said, they're not part of our country anymore. They're gone. They had this criminal record. Yes, they did serve their time, but when you're on a green card or you're here as a permanent resident, you can be deported for reasons like that. ICE has found those reasons under the leadership of the Trump administration. Some of those people are being sent out. But like he said, there's a huge population that's still here that's concerned about all this.
Yeah.
What's your take on where this stands now?
Well, one of the things that makes America exceptional is its commitment to the rule of law. And I think that the bare minimum that should be afforded absolutely everybody is due process. We ought to make sure that we are ascribing the right kinds of actions to the right kinds of people. And right now, people who are here legally, people who have been doing nothing but working hard and paying their taxes and so on, who happen to come from a different country, are scared to death. They don't know when somebody's going to knock on the door and accuse them of being illegal and shipping them out.
Well, these people did have criminal records, some of them violent criminal records. So all of them had something.
Yeah.
All of them had something. Is that enough for you?
Well, I think, I blame the Biden administration, because when you let millions of people across the border and then there's an agency that's tasked with getting them back out of the country, sometimes the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. So, you know, it's hard to go in with a scalpel when it's such a huge number of people. And, you know, I think you have to err to the side of keeping Americans safe. And if someone has a violent history, it's hard to stop and do an intensive investigation on everybody you encounter.
It's a little different here. These were refugees that came here under different circumstances. They didn't come across the border. But yes, when you're talking about a big group of people, the scalpel, they weren't going for that this time. I want to go for another thing that maybe they're digging too deep. You can decide. Even some Republicans, U.S. senators, are not happy about the widespread new tariffs that are out there from the Trump administration, especially agriculture states. Some studies, guys, say this could cost American households $1,900 a year, at least. Short term is what's happening now. Long term, is there a goal here for the president and his economic advisors? Let's have you start on this one.
Yeah, look, I think that, you know, if we're talking about Wall Street, usually the old saying is what's bad for Wall Street is good for Main Street. And I think the end result of this is people are going to try to avoid paying the tariffs, and they're going to bring their companies from Mexico and from Canada into the United States. And it's going to be great economics and paying jobs. Look, Democrats love to talk about the minimum wage. Let's talk about a family sustaining wage. And when Mercedes-Benz hires you at $60 an hour as opposed to $12 an hour, where you can take your family on vacation, you can have retirement benefits, and you can have a pension, that's a much better deal.
Well,
it's not going to happen overnight.
Right, that would take time.
It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen in America. I truly believe that.
Okay,
the end
that's
result
the long plan. What do you got?
I tell you, President of the United States started a trade war with the entire world, and he touched off what will be a recession in this country because of that. You know, this is a massive tax increase. That you cannot present this any other way, because the result, when people are going to take reciprocal actions against us for what we have just done, the price of goods and services are going to go up on everything. So Americans are going to be paying increased prices for cars and clothes and computers and everything.
In the short term, that's definitely happening. But
Yes.
you heard the long-term plan there. If this takes a year, but the manufacturing comes back and things are booming, they'll say it was a success.
Can you build a plant in a year? Of course not.
He said
Can
it's a
you
year and a half or
reclaim
two.
the steel industry in 3 years? No. What you're talking about is a long-term pain that we may not be able to recover from. It is just not
Short-term
good.
pain, long-term gain.
Well, the clock is
you.
ticking for the midterms. Can it change by then?
I
Would be
think
the
it
proof of the
definitely
pudding.
can. You know, the market goes crazy every time anything happens. It's oversensitive to stimulus.
Yeah.
You know, but it always comes back. It
Yeah.
always comes back, and this time it'll come
You
back
heard
stronger.
quickly here. You heard the argument on the unions. Do you think that plan is going to work?
No.
Giving people options.
No, you're upending years and years of negotiations and years of social economic developments and things like that, whether you're talking about the union issue or you're talking about tariffs. Remember, we've had trade agreements for 90 years, and they work. They work. We are partners with a lot of these countries. We ought to stop treating them like, like enemies.
Let's get back to the union thing real quick. Do you think this undercuts unions? It could be with the results.
No, I mean,
of
I
that.
think, I just think it's good, solid legislation for those. Not everybody wants to be in a union, That's the thing. You should have
But in
options.
some industries, you're required to, or else
I
they
know, that's
won't
the
hire
thing.
you.
Imagine being a liberal Democrat and having to have your funds that you pay in a union go to support a candidate of a conservative
And
Republican.
there is part of the problem. All right, folks, we're coming back with one final word. Stick around. Proxy voting for new parents in Congress.
Yes, it's a good idea. I don't understand what the problem is.
Okay, what do you think?
I agree. Part of they say what's wrong with America today is the dissolution of the American family. And I think allowing people to have accommodations, I think they need to do it.
We let these guys go from Zoom sometimes, from their house, to make their points.
That's right.
Have fun in your house this week. We'll see you next time.